Brilliant. So I think we are live.
We are.
So hello everybody. I am Dr. Claire from Cognitive Sports Therapy, and this is Lucy Hibben from Cognitive Sports Therapy. And as ever, it is really lovely to be here. And I actually haven't spoken to Lucy for ages, so I'm just really quite pleased to be having a bit of a chat with Lucy today. But this month, actually this week, is Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week, and we have been planning for this as a team. The three of us are obviously mothers, and it's something that's close to our hearts, about wanting to support mothers with their mental health. We're actually going to do a series of these talks over the four kind of Thursdays running through May, really just looking at different areas and ways of supporting mothers with their mental health. 1 in 10 mothers will struggle, and I actually always think sometimes with these statistics they under register, because not everyone seeks help. I do see a lot of mums who talk about having had postnatal depression but never seeking help at the time. So I think those numbers probably don't do justice to the number of people who are struggling. And I think in particular this year has been horrendous for new mums, because the supports that would have been there have not been there. So today Lucy's here to kind of, I guess we wanted to focus a bit on breath work today, and what value we can gain from using our breath to help our mental health specifically. And I kind of spoke to Lucy beforehand and talked a little bit about my experience of breath work when I was pregnant, was getting into the world of sort of hypnobirthing, and it wasn't something that I had really done before. I wasn't in this kind of world at all, so that was my first introduction to breath work generally, and I did love it. And I guess what I used to do is put on my hypnobirthing CD, do some breath work, and fall asleep, which I took as being a good thing, because it was just
Yeah.
helping me. I wasn't sleeping very well at night because I wasn't very comfortable, and it was just genuinely giving me a little bit of headspace, and it was me time as well, which I really appreciated. But I suspect there's a lot more we could be doing with breath work. Please share, Lucy, go for it.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, as you touched on, that we're all mothers, and certainly for me during both my pregnancies, but more so in the second pregnancy when I had a toddler as well, that's a whole different ball game, and that's when I really got into my yoga, and I started to just feel so much better. But what I realized was it wasn't actually the physical movement of the body, it was the breath work that was giving me the most amount of benefit. And when I say the word breath work, I don't mean anything fancy. I just mean correct, intentional, conscious breathing that so many of us, most of us, just don't do. There are lots of reasons why this is particularly important during pregnancy and also after birth. And they kind of fall into two categories. There's obviously the physical, and then there's the emotional side of things as well. Now, on a physical level, as your baby grows and as your body changes, it becomes harder to breathe. I think
Yeah.
we've probably all kind of experienced that. And so just having the awareness of this deep diaphragmatic breathing as you progress during your pregnancy can just really help with oxygen absorption into your cells. And obviously, we're not looking to try and increase. Most people have perfectly fine amounts of oxygen, but when we breathe well, we start to balance out the oxygen and the CO2 in the blood, which is important because it actually helps our cells absorb more oxygen when we breathe properly. So we've all got enough oxygen, it's just whether we are absorbing it, and so that becomes particularly important when you're pregnant. What tends to happen is that most people start breathing a little bit too high up, the breath becomes
Yeah.
quite shallow, and that just means that you're using muscles in your body that are related to your sympathetic nervous system. So when we breathe up here, this is sending messages to our brain that we're stressed. Pregnancy can be a time of heightened worry and
Stress anyway.
anxiety and stress, and so it's just so valuable to have an awareness of your breath and to sit down a few times a day and to just focus on that sort of deep diaphragmatic breath. And by that, all I mean is expanding your belly as you inhale and softening your belly as you exhale. And a pregnant belly, you can really see this. It's really beautiful. And so, you know, as you do get bigger and your bump gets bigger, it's really a lovely mindful practice to just sit and breathe. And people say, oh, just breathe, but there's a reason why it really is so beneficial to your body on so many levels.
And do you recommend, because the thing that can happen is that particularly in the later stages, but before the baby has dropped, you can have that feeling that you're kind of, as you say, everything's a bit compressed. So do you recommend people breathing sitting up or lying down or being a bit more reclined? What's the best position to be in?
I think you just have to see what works well for you. We're all
Okay.
different. Personally, for me, it was always semi-reclined, so propping
Yeah.
myself up with pillows and being semi-reclined. But as the position of the baby changes and there's lots of other things at play, certainly you could sit up, you could lie down, whatever feels good for you.
Yep.
Also, in terms of just relaxation during pregnancy, you experience this with your hypnobirthing, though in the evening just before you go to sleep or when you're preparing your body for sleep, to take some rounds of breath where you exhale for a much longer amount of time than you inhale. So this stimulates a really deep rest and digest response in our body, and it can just really help calm and send us to sleep for some of us, and for others it might not send you to sleep, but it will certainly put your body into a deeply relaxed state, which was very much sort of what we want during pregnancy. Again, those kinds of breathing techniques are really helpful if you find yourself awake. You know, you need to go to the loo 50 million times a night, and sometimes it is difficult to go back to sleep. So again, it's another tool that you can use. Hands on your belly, just really deep, beautiful, conscious breathing can do wonders. I think we are very tense a lot of the time, and as a result we don't notice it necessarily because it becomes the norm. But when you actually just take a few minutes to just notice, I'm clenching my jaw, my shoulders are up here, to just, like, you know, a few deep breaths is
Relax.
really helpful.
And I know you've been kind of doing your kind of breathwork course with myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely loving it. I guess I could imagine not being able to do some of those techniques if I was pregnant. So I'm really bad at the names of them, but the kind of breath of fire kind of work,
Yeah,
I think would be too much, wouldn't it? So is
you
there things
wouldn't.
that we shouldn't be doing?
Definitely things you shouldn't be doing. So if during pregnancy in particular, you would focus on either 4-4 balanced breathing. So inhale for 4, exhale for 4, diaphragmatic breathing, or 4-8 relaxation breathing. Inhale for 4, exhale for 8. So simple and so effective. I wouldn't recommend necessarily needing anything else. The things you definitely shouldn't do when you're pregnant is ever hold your breath. So we would never advise anybody to do any breath holds or anything like that. This is a time where you just want to connect with your body on a slightly deeper level, where you want to promote feelings of calm and relaxation. And so just simple balancing breathing techniques that don't require anything fancy. It's just really, really helpful. And then I think after pregnancy, this is
Mm,
where for me it's just super important, because I think we all have different experiences, and so many of us struggle after we've had a baby. For me, it was after my second baby that I struggled enormously with my mental health. And again, I was led back to yoga, and more importantly, this is where I really started to develop my breath work. And in yoga, we have pranayama. Breath work is a slightly sort of more modern sciencey based thing, but they're very closely linked. And after, when we start to recover from having a baby physically, I think most doctors would probably say start with diaphragmatic breathing. Start there. You know, this core area that we have, the pelvic floor up to the diaphragm, we want to start to heal this. You know, it goes through a huge change over that 9-month period. And so starting your recovery should be focused on healing, not on losing weight or anything else. It should be focused
Yeah.
on healing in a way that puts you in touch with yourself and creates a little bit of space for you, which is difficult after you've had a baby. And so just to begin with, correct breathing is a really great way to lay the foundation for your recovery. And there are certain things like I can never say it, where you the
Diastasis recti, that's what
thanks.
I've got. Yeah.
So, conditions like that can be really helped. I'm not saying this cures anything, not at all, but it's just starting that healing process by bringing all of this together, using the diaphragm, which is a muscle, using the pelvic. When we breathe with the diaphragm, we use our pelvic floor. So these things are all so intrinsically linked. So before you think, I can't exercise until 6 weeks, you can start straight away. I
Yep.
used to do it when I was just feeding the baby and just breathing deeply, and healing from the inside, but also on an emotional level, just those feelings of calm and relaxation, especially when it's in the middle of the night. Sometimes those
Yep.
feeds can feel really lonely, and you feel like you're the only person in the world to see 3 a.m. and then 4 a.m. And so to have a focus can be super helpful. And for me, it was always my breath. I just used to lie there and just breathe and count my breath, and I would find that it just focuses the mind. So your breath can help postnatally, on a physical level for sure, but for me, again, it was a lot more on the emotional level that I found it really helped me in those moments of sort of worry and anxiety in the middle of the night.
Because I think the thing in that those early days in particular, and actually later on, sometimes it's whenever actually there's a lot of expectation put on new mums to kind of flip back into being everything for everybody, isn't there? And the word that always comes to mind is overwhelming, and that kind of feeling
Mm-hmm.
of being overwhelmed. And I think the one thing again that I think time and time again that I notice when I do the breath work is that what it gives is a little bit of a pause in life. It makes everything stop for just even a couple of minutes, not even a minute, and just that ability to kind of take a step back and create a pause just can lift some of the lid off that overwhelming kind of feeling, and sort of helps your mindset readjust a little bit before you go back into the kind of stress of the moment of being a kind of a new mum, I think. But it's also interesting you kind of talking about that physical side of things, because again, one of the things I've been kind of thinking about a lot is this kind of thing about pelvic floor exercises, and how breath work to me is like pelvic floor exercises, but a little
So
bit more
yeah.
feel
Mm-hmm.
more sexy. It's like it's one of those things that you can be doing without people necessarily knowing that you are doing, but how important it is and what you're gaining by doing it. It's that little kind of moment that you can have to yourself that just is so healing. And it's nice to hear you talk about kind of that restoration and healing quality that we get.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say the word pause, because that is exactly what it's like. And even in the midst of all the crazy, to just be able to go in 2 minutes can make a huge difference, because what it does is it just creates a little bit of space, a little bit of a pause for you to just notice, oh, my breath, it's a bit shallow. I'm kind of breathing up here. Let's sit and just take a few deep breaths. And it's there that it just puts us back in touch with ourselves. And I think from lots of new mums that I have as friends and things like that, I think a lot of them will have said in the past, you lose a sort of a sense of you. It becomes all about being a
The
mum and
baby,
taking care
being
of
a
your
mum.
baby. And so these little moments interspersed throughout the day to just breathe, check in with your breath, are really, I would say, just don't underestimate the power of what it can do. It's a very mindful practice as well. And after you've had a baby, life can feel a little mindless, because you're constantly, or if you're anything like me, you're constantly in this state of overwhelm, right? And
Yeah.
I'll admit that every single day, you know, especially
Yeah.
with my second, when you've got suddenly the two of them, and you're just like, oh my goodness. And breath work, the breath work that I teach relates solely to managing the nervous system, and to one of the big things is our body's ability to recover, our nervous system's ability to recover. So something happens, you respond, but then you want to be able to recover. You want to have that
Yeah.
agile nervous system. And so when you're doing these little breathing exercises, you are building that agility with your nervous system. And as a new mum, things happen 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times a day that leave you like,
Yeah.
you know, there's so much of this as a new mum, but there's not as
Yeah.
much as that. And it's those moments that we need to just increase in our day. And I completely get that the last thing you might be thinking about is, oh, I need to go and sit and breathe. I don't have time for that. But I promise you, if you're watching this and you are a new mom, take a couple of minutes and take some nice deep breaths. And if you need any help with questions or techniques or anything, just give me a shout. But you know, we know how to breathe. We just lose that. Look at your baby. They show you how to breathe. You know, think about that, how the chest of a baby stays nice and still and their belly just rises and
It's all
falls.
about belly, isn't it, for babies?
That's where what we lose as adults. So look at
Yeah.
your baby, notice how they breathe, and do that. And then I was just going to mention with the pelvic floor and the diaphragm. So they're really, the diaphragm is obviously here, the pelvic floor is here, and they work together. And you know, you do your pelvic floor exercises to strengthen your pelvic floor after you've had a baby. However, our diaphragm is also a muscle,
Yeah.
and it gets tight and
It's
it
been
gets
stretched as
weak,
well. Mm.
just like you get weak hamstrings or tight glutes. Your diaphragm can suffer in the same way. And so when you take time to actually use the diaphragm properly, you can strengthen it, just like you can strengthen your pelvic floor. You can strengthen your diaphragm, and when these two things are nice and strong and being used correctly, it can really help this whole area of our bodies. So there's benefits, so many benefits on both sides.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's a good point to kind of close on. We try and keep these nice and short. But yeah, as Lucy says, if anyone's struggling, we are always here at CST. Please just ping us a message. Reach out to us, and we will hopefully try and help you. But I've been loving doing Lucy's breath work, and she is a font of knowledge when it comes to breathing. So if this is something that maybe speaks to you and something you can maybe bring into your day, Lucy's always happy to be contacted. So thank you
Absolutely,
for
yes.
listening.
Thank you.
And you're not alone. That's the other thing I want to say at the end of this. You're
Yeah,
not alone.
and
You'll feel like it,
it's
but you're not.
yeah, absolutely. And just remember that you can reach out to us, just ping us a message on Facebook, on Instagram, and one of us will always get back to you. We are very aware of how it feels after you've had a baby, but equally when you put in the pandemic to the
Yeah,
situation, it's even more important to just, you know, reach out if you need help.
brilliant. Thanks, Lucy. See you
Thank
next week,
you.
everybody.
Take care.